He was the first one to come up with death chambers that later the Germans used. See, the reason why this always goes bad is because there's always somebody who somebody else thinks, if we just get rid of these people. This is why you can't judge whose life is worth living and whose life is not worth living. You have to be very clear. All life is worth living. Otherwise, somebody as famous as Alexander Graham Bell is going to judge. He thought, let's kill him. Or Teddy Roosevelt. I know people just love Teddy Roosevelt. Let me show you this. This is a letter from Teddy Roosevelt from the Outlook. Can you bring it up here? He was at the Outlook in New York when he wrote this. And one of the doctors who was putting one of these camps together, Charles Davenport, he was a eugenist. He was somebody who says, hey, eugenics is a better way to living. And he writes in this, Teddy Roosevelt writes back, he says, any group of farmers who permitted their best stock not to breed and let all the increase come from the worst stock would be treated as fit inmates for an asylum. Yet we fail to understand that such conduct is rational compared to the conduct of the motion which permits unlimited breeding from the worst stocks. He's talking about people. He goes on to say, it encourages or connives at the cold selfishness or the twisted sentimentality, as a result of which men and women ought to marry and have large families, remain celibate, or have no children, or only one or two. Someday we will realize the prime duty and inescapable duty of the good citizen of the right type is to leave his or her blood behind him in the world. And we have no business to perpetuate the citizens of the wrong type. Theodore Roosevelt. It was very popular with progressives. Joseph P. Kennedy and Rose Kennedy had a child of special needs. Her name was Rosemary. I don't know if you know, she was the reason Kennedy started the Special Olympics. Eunice Kennedy was the sister. Dad believed in eugenics. Dad was embarrassed by the imbecile. So Dad sent the family away and didn't tell anybody in the family, including Rose, that he was going to take the imbecile of the family, the embarrassment of the family, and give her a lobotomy. Because she was an embarrassment, and it would be easier on the family. Eunice Shriver, I think, was horrified by that. I'm guessing. But that's why she started Special Olympics. I think in the end that we are going to be the ones thought of as special needs, not the Olympians. This philosophy is no different. It's happening still in America. Overseas, we showed you this about a year ago. This is a woman on the BBC saying it's the compassionate thing as a mother to kill your child. Watch.
If I were a mother of a suffering child, I would be the first to want, a deeply suffering child, I would be the first to want to put a pillow over its face.
Doctor, that's a pretty horrifying thing to say, that you would put a pillow over.
Of course I would, if it was a child I really loved who is in agony. I think any good mother would.
Okay. The one thing that you will argue, or people will argue, is, well, you going to take care of them? Yes. Yes. The system is overloaded with parents who want nothing more than to care for an unwanted child. 2 million parents are currently waiting to adopt. I know what it feels like because my wife and I waited for our child for a long time. My child, Rafe, is the product of a teenager in trouble. She did the bravest thing any young girl could do. She gave birth and then gave our son to us. So the answer is yes, we will take care of the children. Back in a minute. want to introduce you to somebody that I met a year ago, I think, about a year ago. I was giving a speech in New Jersey, and before I got up to speak, this young woman stood up. And I have to tell you, I don't think I mean, besides some of the Navy SEAL friends that I have and Special Forces friends that I have who are, I mean, they do stuff that I think, that's insane. I can't think of a private citizen that I think is more brave. Lila Rose is the president of Live Action. It is a pro-life organization that documents Planned Parenthood violations. But she started out in California. You were in California. You went to, I want to say, it wasn't UC Berkeley, was it?
UCLA.
UCLA. Okay. Still California. And you start on campus saying, hey, I want to talk to you about pro-life issues. That had to be very popular.
Well, surprisingly, Glenn, definitely there was some pushback, but the pushback at UCLA was more from faculty and yes, and from administrators and the students. You know, there was a vocal minority of students who were very for abortion, but most of the students wanted to hear the truth. And a lot of students were so pro-life and were so excited to hear that they could stand up for the lives of unborn children.
And you have no problem with somebody having a fair debate on both sides. I mean, for instance, before we get into the violations, and these will blow your mind, there's one place that I can't go as a dad, and it's just because I can't disconnect my heart from my head. You know, it's Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter. I don't know if anybody's ever read it, but you should look it up. It's great. It was a love letter, and it was an argument between my heart and my head. And for instance, abuse from, you know, if you're raped or incest, I know it's a child, but it's also another child on the other end. And so I had this really hard time. You don't have a problem with having that debate with people, right?
We need to have that debate.
Right. And so there's no problem with having a debate. But the problem comes where nobody is talking about the actual abuses that are going on because of Planned Parenthood. Explain.
Well, first of all, let me say Planned Parenthood, the ultimate abuse of that organization, the biggest abortion chain in our country, is the victim of the unborn child, because they kill more unborn children, which are our most defenseless Americans in our country, over 300,000 of them a year. So that's the ultimate victim. But beyond that, you mentioned incest victims and you mentioned rape victims, Glenn. And beyond that, a lot of those victims find their ways into Planned Parenthood's clinics. They're taken there often by their abusers. And then traffic victims. We have over 300,000 traffic victims in our country, children that are trafficked, sold for sex. And they find their way into these clinics and they become victims too.
These are the same kind of people that we saw with Acorn, where you have a pimp go in and say, hey, I've got these underage kids, and they're coming in, and they did nothing. Here is, let me show you the map where there are violations from Planned Parenthood, things that people should go to jail. Here are the violations. There are 31 different locations. Let's pull up the different ones. Let's go to New Jersey first. Tell me a little bit about this video before we play it.
Sure. The video that we're about to see shows a Planned Parenthood manager in the second biggest chain of clinics in New Jersey advising our actors who are posing as human traffickers of 14 and 15-year-old girls and telling them how they can use the system, get cheaper abortions and birth control for the little girls to keep them on the street. This is part of our trafficking investigation, where we've released 7 different clinics showing Planned Parenthood willing to aid and abet the trafficking of little girls.
Here it is.
We're involved in sex work, all right? And there's some girls that we manage that we're not quite sure if I got it from one of them.
Okay.
All right, so they might need to come in here and get tested as well. Do you
Yeah,
guys provide
yeah,
services
so-
for that? Some of them are young. They're kind of like, some are like 15, 14.
You know, me and my other counselor, like, for the most part, we want as little information as possible. Even if they lie, just say, oh, he's the same age as me, 15.
What if they need an abortion, though?
You never got this from me, just to make all of our lives easier.
Okay.
If they're 14
Yeah.
and under,
Yeah.
just send them right there if they need an abortion, okay?
Wow. What happened?
what happened. What you saw and what we saw again and again during our investigation is Planned Parenthood workers, from the manager to the practitioner to the staffer, they don't care about these young girls. They don't really care about these young women. They care about aiding and abetting these abusers and getting them secret abortions, secret birth control, and then sending these little girls back out the door.
And that person was fired, though, in New Jersey?
After Planned Parenthood called it a hoax and pretended it wasn't real, the pressure built, then they fired the first one.
Okay, let me play one more. This is Bloomington, Indiana. This is you, isn't it?
This is me
This
posing
was
undercover.
you. But while she could still get away with it, and I'll tell you that story in a minute. Watch.
How old are you?
I'm 13. And I act a lot older than I am, so it works out because he might be 31.
Okay. I didn't hear the age. I don't want to know the age.
So if I just say, I don't know who the father was, but he's one of the guys at school or something.
Right. Just, you know, you've seen him around, you know he's 14, he's in your grade and whatever.
What did you think when you saw somebody saying to a 13-year-old, hey, I don't want to know the 31 age?
Well, I remember being in that clinic acting as a 13-year-old, and when she said that, and I saw that again and again. I mean, we went to 10 different clinics for that project. We saw the same response, ultimately the cover-up of abuse. And my heart was broken because I heard an adult woman who was in a healthcare professional setting telling a little girl who's basically saying, I've been raped, you know, I'm a statutory rape victim, I'm a sexual abuse victim, telling her, I don't care, don't tell me anything. Oh, and then later on in the conversation, she talks about, is he going to pay for it? You know, this is how much it costs, and basically figuring it out so the little girl can get the pregnancy taken care of, send her right out the door.
Did they fire her?
They fired this one.
What about the other ones that you did?
All of the other ones remained. One of them resigned. The other 8 maybe still working there.
And because of this, they put your picture up like a wanted poster in Planned Parenthood, right?
Yes, that's right.
And what is that? Explain that story.
So they have my photo up in many other clinics because of these investigations. As a brunette, they've had my photo up saying Lila Rose is doing these investigations. Since I was 18, they've had that photo up. I'm 22 now. So for that project that you just saw in that Indiana video, I bleached my hair to keep going undercover. They put up a blonde photo up next to the brunette, so now they're catching on to us, right? But the reality is I work with a team of talented young people from across the country, so we're still doing these investigative projects, and regardless of the fact that we've revealed this so many times over the years, they're still covering up abuse. They're not only covering it up,
That's because nobody in the media is really, I mean, this one has gotten
Yep.
more coverage than any of them that I have seen. Let me just ask you a question before we break, and that is this. If that was your 13-year-old daughter, is that how you would want another fellow citizen to respond? Back in a minute.